sake.
Hello there, and good evening to everyone listening to the FFS podcast. I'm your host, Praddy, once again, and this is episode number 6 of season 4 of the FFS series. Now, to those of you listening to the FFS series for the first time, this particular series is our mainstream one, and on this particular series, we talk about the biggest stories in the world of football, whether it be men's or women's football, right? So we cover everything that goes around in the world of football. I've said football too many times here, but yeah, we cover everything that any story that's blown up in the media, we try and cover that as well as off left field topics as well. So thank you for joining us here. Today's episode is slightly different. We normally do live episodes. However, if you've joined us in the live watch long, you probably noticed that there were too many technical difficulties. So this is going to be a pre-recorded video that we will upload on YouTube as well. So don't worry, you will still get your daily dose of our faces. But unfortunately, you will not be able to participate in this particular conversation. Joining me in today's topic, and before we get to him, let's talk about what we're going to be discussing today, and that is Indian women's campaign, the Indian women's campaign in the Under 17 FIFA Women's World Cup. We're going to be discussing about the positives, the negatives, and what are the lessons that they've probably learned from this international experience. Joining me on this particular podcast talking about the Indian women's team is a very, very passionate Indian fan. He's been on the podcast multiple times before. His name is Akshay. And to those of you who have heard of him in the past, you know that he is not only an Indian supporter, Indian football supporter, but he's also a very passionate Chelsea supporter. I'm glad we could have him back on here because he actually attended the group stage matches. So we'd love to get his perspective on what happened uh, during the group games. And Akshay, welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad we could have you on here. I'm glad we could do this podcast finally. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself to those who haven't heard of you before?
Sure. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I this is one of the topics that I would have really gladly wanted to discuss. Happy to be here. And yeah, hello everyone. My name is Akshay Dutia. I'm from Mumbai, and I'm a huge Chelsea supporter, Mumbai City FC supporter, Indian football, age groups, men, women. I watch all games, and I love watching the games from the stadium instead of watching it home on TV. And I like to travel away to the stadiums and enjoy the matches in the stadium.
Awesome, great. So before we talk about what happened during the the group stages with respect to the Indian women's team, I want to talk about your experience. I'm gathering. I suppose I might be mistaken that this is probably your first World Cup that you've attended. Though I think FIFA did have their under 17 the men's tournament
Yes.
as well. I'm not sure whether you attended that, but
So I
like,
had actually missed that one because I was traveling for work. So I had missed that one. It was actually my first FIFA event.
awesome. So how was it? How was the experience? How was the atmosphere attending the Indian women's game?
It was brilliant. It was too much fun. I think Odisha, they've just got into football since Odisha FC's just joined in the ISL to them. So football is not a very popular sport in Odisha. And, people coming to the stadium, enjoying the sport. It was lovely to watch. And, them supporting us with the chanting, joining us. That was one thing that, we really enjoyed. The first game the crowd was not so involved, but as the we got to the third game, it was like the crowd was super involved with all the chanting. So was really happy that Odisha responded to us and helped us create that atmosphere in the stadium. So that was one of the best parts. And also in the third game, I think many of the people would have already seen the post on Instagram by Femlu. We were joined by Shreya Hooda, Pyari Zaza, Arifa Abbas, and Grace Hunnur. The four of them are playing for Odisha in the Indian Women's League. So they joined us for chanting for India in the last game.
And that definitely would be inspiring because they're these are youngsters. This isn't the first team of the Indian women playing. This is under 17. So for the young teenage girls playing their first sort of World Cup, having that sort of experience, to have that sort of support must have been insanely incredible. Um, I just want from an atmosphere perspective, like how were you impressed by the way FIFA and the AIFF sort of handled the crowd handled promotion of the event to have, as good an atmosphere as you claimed to be?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, I would say. FIFA and AIFF both in the initially, if you just talk about the supporters' perspective, in the first game we had huge problems with our banners, megaphones, and drums. But eventually, we coordinated with FIFA, we coordinated with AIFF, then they coordinated with the ground security staff, and also from the second game it kind of smoothened in. But yeah, it's actually, I think, a very Indian stadium problem where the
Yeah.
local police authorities, they don't understand, like, what is chanting, why are we taking in drums and all. So that was one of the problems. But yeah, eventually it was sorted out by AIFF and FIFA. So glad at least the second and third game we could enjoy that.
Yeah, I definitely do agree that it is a very country specific problem, because it's not only, I won't say sports specific, because even for like cricket or anything, they're very high on security. I don't blame them. I mean, past events have sort of dictated that they do need to be highly alert about certain things, but they probably are taking it a little too far with certain things. So of course there needs to be that extra bit of coordination or that extra effort that needs to go in to do that. With all that being said, let's move on to talking about the group games. Now, before we get to the results, the group stages, or the group that India was in, with saw them fight against the likes of United States, who are World Cup winners in the senior team. We've Brazil, who are in their own right an amazing team, men and women's as well, and of course a sort of minnow team in Morocco, you could say, like, as probably on par with where you'd expect India and Morocco and all of them to be, right? Looking at the group itself, what did you make of it? And going into, before this tournament had began, what were your expectations of this Indian team?
Honestly, my expectations were not too high because I knew USA and Brazil are actually too sorry, excuse me. They're actually too good for India, and it's going to be a battering. I was expecting that. So that no, nothing to blame. No, none. The team cannot be blamed for that. It's just that those teams are far, far, far better and superior than India. For Morocco, yes, I expected India to fight, but I think since they've qualified on merit ahead of teams like Sweden, I think they've done their bit in qualifying for the World Cup, and that showed in that game that they are no pushovers. I was expecting us to get some points against Morocco, but I think they really, really proved me wrong by playing a really good first game against Brazil and then continuing that against India. So it was really nice to watch Morocco play really well.
Awesome, great. Uh, yeah, I think I would probably share similar thoughts. When I saw that group and I saw US and Brazil, I was like, that's not easy to play against, especially a team that, like you mentioned, hasn't gotten through merit, right? This India have only gotten through because they're the host, which I'm not. I mean, this is not blaming anyone, or it's not like to say, oh, India did deserve it. Every tournament has a host nation, and they are fortunately, they get a direct entry, okay, at the expense of someone who probably would have fought for it. That's part and parcel of football, so I'm not taking anything away. I think that they deserve to be. We'd love to see India. We always love to or we always wanted to see India play in a World Cup, and I'm glad that we got it here. We got in the men's, I suppose, the under 17 a few years ago, and we got it now for the women's as well, so I'm glad that happened. But okay, I'm going to give you an option now. Do you want to start off with the bad news or the good news?
I would work with anything's fine. I think the let's start with the good news and the bad to follow. I think.
Okay, all right. I mean, personally, I would have said let's get rid of the bad and then end on a positive. But let's start. No, let's go. I mean, I gave you the option, so I am going to go your way. Um, so let's talk about the positives, right? India participating in it's such an amazing, like, international tournament like the FIFA World Cup. What are the positives that India can take from it?
I think I'll first start with the infrastructure facilities. the Fatora Stadium in Goa, FIFA helped install an artificial turf over there. So, infrastructure-wise, Fatora Stadium has become much better than it was before the World Cup. Plus, the funds that India got for the Under 17 World Cup, which I'm sure they've used in the stadium facilities and all. So, it's good that infrastructure-wise it does help. Although there were new stadiums as such built like we generally see in a proper men's or a women's World Cup. But yeah, still it helped in refurbishing or getting the stadiums better. So infrastructure wise, a totally win for India. Then coming to the team, I think it was a good experience for the girls. Uh, playing against the best nations in the world, it's you don't see that every day. And we've seen in the past the senior women they can play against the better teams. Like we did score against Brazil with the senior women. We've seen that in the past.
Yeah.
So we are not like very like a team who's only going to get pushed over. So it's good that it will help them improve a lot. So I'm glad that they got the opportunity that they got, but like there are a lot of things behind that we'll speak in the negative part. But on the positive side, I'm actually really happy for the girls that they got that experience playing against teams like USA and Brazil.
Exactly. Like even when I was looking at it, and we'll talk about the score lines a little while later, but just the fact that they get to play with the likes of the Brazilian women and the United States women who are on top of their game, that surely would kind of show Indian women players like that is where we need to be. It gives them an
Right.
internal drive and an internal push. And I'm
Yeah.
sure going forward, if the federation were to not do much, within the girls itself, within the women itself, there will be like a push saying, you know, we need to. If you're not going to take the initiative, we need to take that initiative because we know that we can get there, and we know that we need to get there in order to actually make our country proud. Or to even battle against the likes uh, of US, Brazil, and even Morocco in this particular circumstance. So I completely agree with you on that. I look at it as, I suppose, I want to know, do you look at this tournament then as just experience building and experience gaining rather than wanting to get to, I mean, you said yourself that when you looked at the group stage, there was no way that India was going to get through the quarters or semis and all of that, right? So going into this tournament, did you think that this tournament, I just want the girls to like kind of learn from being on the pitch with these sort of players?
I think it was just that it's going to just be an experience for them playing against the better teams, and maybe looking at them they get inspired that we also want to get there. So we need to work hard to get there. Maybe probably they see that they can work on the fitness. That's one thing I think they definitely would have learned, that they need to work on their fitness. That's one advantage. And I think I missed just one thing, that we saw VAR in India for the first time during the World Cup. So that's another plus, that in Indian stadiums we are seeing VAR. So that's another positive. Maybe if you look at it that way.
Yeah, it definitely ties in with your infrastructure argument, right? Like if you're going to start refurbishing and making Indian pitches and Indian stadiums better, then if you want to get to that international standard, right, you have to go in line with what the international leagues are doing. And if they're implementing VAR, you have the technology. India is not bereft of innovation and technology. They have that in abundance. It's all about
Yes.
implementation, right?
Sure, indeed.
So the fact that they've done it here, hopefully now for the women's and the men's leagues as well, they could sort of use it as like a starting point, maybe have it for a few games or something, and then implement it in a larger scale. Another positive, I suppose, I want to ask you is, I from what I saw is that there were a lot of school children that were brought in,
Yes.
the grounds. So how was that received? How were they, like, do you think it's a positive to have them there, try and see that, give them that sort of uh, like future, I suppose, or that the belief that they could at one day be on that pitch playing in an international arena, playing on an international stage?
I think those students in the stands. First of all, I would really like to applaud them because they were, I think, loud enough to even mute us for a while. I think they were too good with their voices and all. And the DJ over there, he actually used them to good effect to, uh, make them enjoy the whole experience in the stadium. So I would really be happy, if some of them, if not as a player, but definitely as a fan, come back to the stadium. So it's grassroots for fans as well as players. I feel that one.
No, you're right, because these will be future fans of the sport. And that's how, as a country or as a football nation, you would want to increase your viewership, right? Like, if you were going to charge crazy amount of money, you're not going to get people on the seats. Even if it's free, even if it means you're not getting as much revenue from ticket sales, the fact that you're getting people to watch, Indian women's football, that would increase viewership later on, because it won't stop here. It just, exponentially grow, I suppose. And it works for Indian football that way. I just want one more thing in terms of the positives from a playing perspective. Were there any positives across the three games that you saw, whether it be midfield, the goalkeeping, the defense, the attack, any sort of places where you thought, yeah, we probably held our own against, if not America, maybe against Brazil or Morocco?
I think, after the first game, it was always a game of two halves against Morocco and Brazil. We got better defensively. Like against Brazil, they were struggling for 45 minutes to get to
Yeah.
the goal. They were playing well, they were dominating possession, but it was difficult for them to, get into scoring positions. They were enjoying the possession, dominating the game, but getting into scoring positions is what we definitely stopped them for around 40-45 minutes. I think they scored very late in the first half, their first goal. And then after that, they just went for long ranges, and we saw 2-3 absolute beautiful goals, top bins, absolute top bins. So that's what they had to resort to. Alternative plan to score goals is what I felt in the Brazil game. And in the Morocco game also, I think the penalty late in the half is where it all started falling apart. So we definitely did see much, much, much improvement from the US game to the Morocco game to the Brazil game. And even I think tactic wise, Denovi just went for a park the bus against Brazil. And I don't think it's easy to do park the bus against a team like Brazil and, defend for around 90 minutes. It's a difficult task. And the Indian team, in my opinion, they did a brilliant job defending in that game.
No, I completely agree. I think to keep Brazil quiet for that long was really something. You could actually see that. Yeah, I mean, park the bus is not a necessarily a
It's
bad tactic. As
not a
yeah,
bad.
I mean, you'd say that given who your coach was at one point, but in general, given that you are an underdog team fighting against a favorite, it definitely does not matter if you're going to park the bus, because you're trying to do the best for your own team. And if that helps, and it did for a while, then that's absolutely fine.
Right.
So yeah, I think there were definitely some positives that you could take from this tournament, despite the results and all of that. And it's definitely something that we'll talk about later on, or we'll hint upon later on, using the positives to grow in the future, or the lessons that the federation and the players will learn. We'll talk about that after we talk about the negatives. So let's move on to the not so good news, right?
But
Yeah. So 16-0 was the cumulative scoreline for India. Granted, the two results against US and Brazil were there. I think the Morocco one, being 3-0 down, was slightly disappointing, more so than the other two. Overall, what were the negatives in terms of the style of play? What did you feel did not work? Even if we're talking, I mean, we know that India aren't the most tactically astute team. They're still learning. Indian women's football is at such a nascent stage, but still, what were the mistakes made either by Denby or by the players? What are the negatives that you saw from that?
I think the scoreline was definitely not indicative of the way that India played. They did play a decent game, and I think we expected them to concede a lot of goals. But yeah, I would not absolutely not blame the players for having such a performance goals wise or results wise. I think we need to just pull it back a little bit before the tournament. where India just practiced for what, like 4 or 5 months, 2, 3 exposure tours. That's what they had. And whereas if you see the other teams, they might some of them might be playing in the lower youth leagues, some B teams of the main teams in other countries. So the main difference in quality was due to game time, I feel. The Indian team did not have that much game time. Just playing 3 exposure tours where you play what 10 games before the World Cup. That's not going to help you to compete against a USA whose team has probably played 100 games before the World Cup. So, that's the I think the differentiator number one, which the federation needs to look at. And if I have to talk player wise, I think I already harped upon that they definitely need to probably work on the fitness and pace a bit, because uh, if you saw the Brazil game, they were getting into chances on the counter attack where they could run a 10-meter distance but then get covered by the defender. So that's where I think the players can maybe work their end on working on the fitness and pace, and maybe a little bit of shooting also, because they were really scared to run through and just shoot from wherever they could. So that's where I think the players can play their part. But I think the federation needs to really pull their socks up by getting them to play leagues, youth leagues in the country, in each district, each state. That's how I think we need to start and build, because this batch is going to play the SAF champion under 18 SAF championship in 23 or 24. So if we definitely want to use this World Cup as a stepping stone to that, I think now is the time to act upon it and turn this into a positive rather than the negative that we are talking about right now.
Okay, I'll let you on a few minutes of solo rant in just a bit. Okay, against the Fed. I'll let you on that. Okay, I'm just gonna mute my mic in a few minutes and then I'll let you just go berserk on it. But I do agree. I think in terms of the play, yes, you can concede 16 goals. That's fair enough, right? Because the opposition has that much more quality. But I just felt like in terms of an attacking threat, India was pretty non-existent. They were trying to. They had their few
Yeah.
chances. I'm not saying that they were like they didn't create anything. I did see a few chances here and there, but it's about finishing. Or I feel like the potency up front was
Mhm.
lacking, and I felt like even if it was maybe one or two goals, you just needed to have that. I'm not saying that they could have scored like 8 or 9 and had it 16-9. Oh yeah, 16-9 against, but it just didn't feel like you were even if you tried to defend your life for your life, it just felt like you needed to just try and you had nothing to lose for. No one was expecting India to go through. So the fact that you didn't have anything to play for, and even if you consider 50 odd goals, I just wanted to see India try and say, let's go and attack these teams and see what happens, right? If we were, and in the case of USA, we were already 5-0 down by halftime, right? So it didn't harm anyone's case by saying, like, screw it, just use the first half as an experiment to go and attack and see what happens. If you do score a couple of goals, fair enough. If you do concede 5 in the first half, probably we're anyway going to concede that much against the big team. So I just felt that was probably lacking that attacking intent um, on a regular basis. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Would you agree with what I just said?
I think I kind of agree that, Denaby was also kind of not attacking, putting his attacking tactics on. It was more of a defensive tactics and trying to play on the counter, which clearly did not work because of pace and
Yeah.
fitness. So that's where, if we would have been fit, I think we could have got some more goals on the counter, which was clearly, we had a lot of chances against Brazil. I
Yep.
thought we could have easily, if we had pace, we could have scored 2, 3 easily in that game.
I
We just
completely
get
I saw that. I saw a couple of counter attacks and I was like, oh, if you were just like 10 kilometers faster or something like that, right? And you could have actually, I think India would have caused a lot of problems on the counter attack. I do agree. I think in terms of probably it's also down to the players that he had, and he's not had the sort of they aren't fast or quick enough. So maybe he's gone for the cautious approach. But like I said, kick the ball up and try and see what's the harm. What more could you have lost from it? It's not like anything was gonna happen there. So I suppose that was one of the negatives that I personally saw from across the three games. Now I'm going to mute my mic and I'm going to let you on your rant. So, from a federation point, what went wrong,
I
or
think, yeah,
what do you think were the negatives?
like I said, that this was only a tournament for namesake, and we did not prepare for the tournament as such. Playing 10, 20 games before the tournament in the last 4 months, that's not how it works. It has to be a proper process. We knew that it was supposed to happen in 2019, this World Cup. So few of these, like Shilki Devi, she was the captain back then for that World Cup, and she went to the senior team, played a couple of games in the senior team, and then came back to this team. So if this would have happened in any other country, believe me, the player would have balled throughout the World Cup. Is what I feel. Because if a player goes to the senior team, practices with the senior team, plays a game, that definitely helps them to get better. But we didn't see that over here. I saw the same Silky Devi throughout the games that I watched her. So that was due to lack of game time, I feel. I think she's one of my favorite players. She can play as a centre back. She can play as a defensive midfielder. So it's not that the player's bad. She doesn't have the right facility to go through. And we keep on talking about the experience that these girls are gonna get, but we don't think on the flip side that this could actually demotivate them. Getting thrashed in all the games, it would definitely demotivate them. The federation, if this is how we want to go ahead, just leaving our team to hang out dry over there, I don't think it's pointless having these tournaments only for that namesake. If we are having a tournament, we are hosting it, we've got it for free. So we should definitely work towards it and do something at least that we feel that at least we tried. That should be the approach, that at least we tried. But I don't think we saw that. There was absolutely no support given to the girls for this tournament, is what I felt.
Great. Now, a couple of questions that I'm going to pick point on that, right? So the first one is, the 2019 World Cup thing scenario. It's so often that we see it. For me personally, also I've seen it like when you have a tournament coming, you prepare for it, and then when it gets delayed, instead of taking advantage of that extra time that you had, you kind of just think like, oh, it's got another couple of years, we'll see it at that point of time, and you just kind of laze around for the next 2 years. And then, like, I remember a few years ago I had an exam that got postponed at the last minute, and that would mean I had extra time to study, but nope, I used that for holiday. I just chilled, and then at the last minute I was like, oh shit, I need to study. So the same sort of concept, and it reflects poorly on the federation. That I know COVID came in between. I'm not denying 1 year, at least 1.5 years. I can say fair enough, but you still had you had that amount of time to plan and prepare for what was going to happen. It wasn't a surprise that you were going to host the tournament. I suppose it is a surprise that you were banned and then you were reinstated that quick. I don't know whether you thought you'd just be banned and you're like, I don't need to worry about it right now. But you did know you were going to host it. You could have planned for the IWL, and you could plan for so many women's leagues to be played. Because, like you mentioned in the positives, right? The Americans and the Brazilians, they have proper legitimized leagues back home where they play week in, week out. Right? And so for them, they get so much of exposure to do this. So I completely I understand where you were coming from when you said, there's no preparation. The girls look so out of practice, so far away from the quality that was shown in that particular group. And that is down to the federation not planning. Now, another question that I have for you is, you mentioned the player going from under 17 to the senior team, getting some experience. I want to know, yeah, she did go to the senior team. She played a game, but how big of a standard difference does that make? So, for example, if you say in the men's team, right? Like you say Chelsea, a youth player going to the first team, there is a vast jump in the standard. Whereas for Indian football, I don't think there's so much of a fast jump. So I just want to get your thoughts on it. So do you think that also, even if she had gone play for the senior team and come back, the fact that you saw her not really improve that much is a definite indicator of how the the jump from amateur to pro or from a under 17 to a senior team isn't as much as it should be.
It is definitely down to again the system. I feel because when she went there, she got a couple of games as a substitute, and I think she started one odd game. But I think what would have helped her is speaking to players like Ashlata, playing with players like her, learning from Aditi, Dalima, the senior players. So that's where she would have gained a much better experience. But when it comes to playing time again, like the senior women also get a 1 month IWL. So
Yeah.
you might just imagine what these younger girls are getting. If the senior women are playing a 1 month league, I don't think the younger women even play any league. So that's where we are at.
Yeah, it's probably down to only the state leagues. And we know I've spoken to many people on this podcast about how it's difficult for the states. Difficult to see what the states are doing. There's no plan for what the states are planning in terms of the leagues and interstate leagues and intrastate leagues or interstate leagues as well. So I completely agree with all of that. Another point that I wanted to catch up with or talk to you about, and that's something that I also wanted to bring up, is how this could actually demoralize players, and not only players, but we spoke about young kids coming to the stadium and watching it. Sure, it's a positive on the one hand, and I love to look at the positive and say, they're looking at this game saying, I can be at this, I can be a Indian player, I can play in the World Cup and all of that. But on the second hand, seeing your team being demolished 8-0, 5-0, 3-0, that also kind of, we live in an age where you get so heavily criticized, you may get made fun of, even if you're an under 17 women's player, right? We saw Twitter not being too nice, like seeing those games, like, how can you be so disappointing, why are we supporting this team? you know it's hilarious in the first place, because if you know anything about Indian football, you know that it's not on the players, you can't really help it. But on the second hand, I feel sorry, because for not only for the players, but for anyone watching it, it makes you even want to support or watch the game less, because why would you watch a team that's getting battered so badly, getting humiliated? So I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I think I totally agree with you on this one because even during those games, like I told you, Odisha is relatively new to football. So the people who had come to watch him, they watching the first game, say USA versus Brazil. Then they are watching, say, India versus Morocco, or they were watching USA Morocco, Brazil Morocco, and then they are watching India play. So they've seen the quality of the other teams. They've seen Morocco just concede just one goal against Brazil. They've
Yeah.
seen Morocco fight Brazil. So they would expect like a team like Morocco, if it's their first time, they can play this well, then why can't we? And even when we were playing Brazil, there were few people wearing Indian jerseys and then suddenly chanting Brazil, Brazil, Brazil. It's just that they just got swayed away. So it definitely demoralizes the fan following and people wanting to watch the game. And coming from the players, I think not only the players but even the parents. Like the parents might think that this is no future. This
Yeah.
this game doesn't have any future. They might not send their children for such games. Like especially the women. Men, I don't think we've been battered this bad at the 2017 World Cup. We were still a little better than this. But I think the results in this might really really affect the way parents might not want to send their children for the games. Is what could be a really huge factor that could lead to even worsening of things for Indian football.
I'll agree with you there, because again, drawing from personal experience, not like I was going to be any great cricketer or anything, but I was part of my school team, cricket
Yeah.
school team, and the first game, I think we went there and we got battered, and then I came back home and I told my parents we lost the game, and they're like, "Why are you going?" And and it's the same, because we had no preparation. Our coach was basically just like some part timer. We did no such nothing, right? And the other team had actually some genuine players, so we just rode on the luck that we used to play during phys ed classes, and that we just knew to how to hit the ball. So we kind of just relied on whatever we knew to go and play. And if we got wickets, fair enough. If we didn't, we lost every game. But you sort of my folks obviously said, what is it that you're doing? You'd rather just be at home, study, at least get your 12th grade marks up, rather than go out and simply do that. And it's such an Indian mentality, right? Brown parent mentality to do that. So I'm not taking it away. I'm glad that my parents said that because I definitely would not have been a great cricketer. But uh, so this is not on them. But I do agree. I do sympathize. I mean, I do empathize as well with these players that you know such such results could bring up this conversation. Like, is women's football really worth it? And we don't want that to happen. So it's definitely something that is very precarious. Unfortunately, the women's team had to play it. Like, if it was through merit and then this happened, then there would be more questions on, the coach and all that. But the fact that we got it because we were hosting it, there is some sort of leniency that you can give them, saying, we didn't earn it, but we were there because we hosted it, and like, fair enough. Let's not be too harsh on them. And so yeah, let's I suppose those are the negatives, and I don't want to delve. I don't want to talk too much of it because this, given everything, and I suppose you'd agree with me, this should be looked at just a learning experience, and that is a positive, I suppose.
Definitely, I think it is a learning experience, and like I said, we need to take it as a learning experience for the upcoming under 18 staff, because these are the very same set of players that will represent India over there. And maybe we can, since we're talking about staff, we could learn from Bangladesh, the model that they are running right now from school to school and getting those players up. Like, I think in a couple of years, Bangladesh women's team is going to really, really be much better than India faces what they are doing right now. They are actually running it at a very lower school level thing. So if we really want to fight at the under 18 staff with these girls and harp on the experience, we have to start now and start building on it as a positive experience.
Awesome, great. Now let's move on to the lessons that can be learned from this. We've obviously hinted upon it in our previous conversations, but there have been talks, and I think there's a recent video that's been posted now by the AIFF president about what the roadmap would be. Now, he said it in Hindi, and my Hindi is as good as like a fifth grader. It's hilarious because if I try speaking Hindi, people have shared clips of like real Americans trying to speak Hindi. So I don't know exactly what it's like, but I suppose from what I've heard and what I've could understand is that there is going to be a slight movement towards trying and helping grassroots football in India, women's football especially as well. And I think they're also talking about the leagues and giving priority to what. Try and fill me in, but what are the steps that they've announced, and is that, I suppose, in line with what lessons could be learned from the World Cup?
I think it was apparently his 50-day plan that he. So initially, when they came in, they said that after 100 days they are going to put in a proper roadmap. And now at the end of today was his 50th day, so he just gave in an interview and he just kept on speaking what he's been speaking since he's joined. Like, he went to the states, he went to all the state federations, he spoke to everyone about developing youth football. I've always read that around 18,000 school, 18 lakh students, 18,000 grounds, and all those numbers flying in all his interviews and post his state meetings. But I would really want him to at least do 10% of what he's speaking, at least. If we like, first maybe start with each state federation having some guidelines where like we do for club licensing criteria, you can actually have a state registration criteria where they have to have a certain amount of youth games, certain amount of women games, certain amount of men games. So that's how it will build accountability to the state governments. And they've been speaking about it, but I don't know how much are they going to work on it. So let's wait for the 100-day announcement of the roadmap, maybe, and then take it from there. I think somewhere in December his 100 days would be done. Eagerly waiting for how it's going to pan out after that, or it's just going to be more of words and PR. I don't know how what's going to be at the end of December.
Say that you were the president and you've seen the performances been put by the under 17 team, right? After the group stages, what would your recommendations, what would your measures be to help grow it, to where it should be, or to help prepare for the upcoming tournaments?
I think definitely what he's been speaking makes total sense. He's been a footballer. He's speaking the right things, but if he can implement those things, it will be really really helpful. Because speaking of 18 lakh students, if he can even get 10 lakh to play, I think that's a win for the federation at youth levels, youth leagues. He's been totally harping on youth leagues. So let's see if we actually see the youth leagues. And coming to the IWL also, I read in his today's interview that it's not going to be specified to one uh, ground. It's going to be on multiple grounds and multiple states. So I think they are looking at having small groups, like a group 3-4 games in one state, then 3-4 games in another state. So definitely I would love to see more games. In the IWL also they play just 11 games per team, which is not I think a good number for any team to play throughout the season. 11 games, that's absolutely horrific. So maybe if they can build on the IWL and youth leagues like they are speaking, it would definitely help.
Perfect. Yeah, I definitely think grassroots women's football in general needs to develop. And hopefully that's something that they pick up. How likely is it that they will actually do it? Now, speaking as a seasoned Indian supporter, how likely, what's the percentage, given that there's been a change now, and with the FIFA ban, they've actually had to start taking things a little more seriously. So what percentage would you give, or what are the odds?
I think when they started, I was pretty hopeful to a 30-40%, but since in the last 50 days, I've only seen improvement, going from absolutely no reply to just going like, we need to assess. That's what they're coming out with, that there is a problem, they're identifying it and saying we need to assess. But what
But I
is being done to
suppose
assess it?
But I
There's
suppose that
no.
is the start, right? I mean, I know it's not easy to suddenly just say
It
I'm
is
going to
not
do this
easy.
this.
It is not easy. It is not easy. But definitely, there was a roadmap in place. They could have, just started off with just the relegation promotion thing. Maybe, to just give the fans also a vote of confidence that, boss, we are here to change things. We are not here to just sit. So that was already planned. They didn't have to, come and start that from scratch. The
Yeah.
roadmap was in place. So, them speaking about the delay in roadmap is, where the trust issues start creeping in. So, had they, said that, okay, chalo, we've just come in, not this season, but next season we are definitely doing it. But what they've said is, we'll need to postpone it, is what they started with. So that's where the trust issue comes in. We were hopeful definitely of the new management coming in, but the attitude is right, but the intent and action, I don't think at the moment is right. But let's see, it's just 50 days. And let's hope that they actually do something of what they are saying, and it's not just a total hoax.
Sure, definitely. We'll definitely have a podcast post. Uh, let's see. I wouldn't say 100, but let's see. Let's
Yeah.
wait for a while to see how we'll have a good measurement of how many days before we actually have a podcast talking about whether those actions have actually been implemented. Uh, another question that I have is, the stadium choice of Orissa. Were you happy with that? Did you think it should have all been played in Mumbai? Do you think they should have had it in several different places like Delhi? I mean, I don't know, yeah, probably Delhi or Kerala or Bangalore or something like that, where you normally get a lot of normal crowd as well.
I think with the ISL being run at the same time, the
All
stadiums
right.
were quite restricted for choice. But I would have definitely loved that. Instead of doing it at DY Patil, which is not historically a football ground, it's a cricket ground. And we saw that today it rained and those pitches got mucky, and you could see the cricket pitches there. So maybe if they would have chosen Trans Stadia in Ahmedabad, it's a absolutely beautiful stadium. It's a new stadium. Or somewhere in Delhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, they've already hosted a under 17 World Cup. So that stadium is, I don't know how well it is maintained. I've not been there since a really long time, so don't know how well it is maintained. But yeah, that was another option. I think I just put out this tweet today that instead of DY Patil, they should have tried Trans Stadia or Jawaharlal Nehru Delhi. And I am
Yes.
totally happy with Odisha because Naveen Patnaik's actually doing a lot of things for sports, even though it's only hockey. But at least the state is supporting some sport. So if that stadium is making it available and the ISL team is also agreeing to not play their home games for that bit. It's a good thing that Odisha was there, and a new state is always better to create a footballing culture. And Ahmedabad, I think we could have definitely built on the ICC Ahmedabad that was there, the Intercontinental Cup in Ahmedabad. We could have definitely built on the supporting there, because fans over there had really responded to the ICC Ahmedabad. So I think it would have been better for us also as fans to build up on that atmosphere. So I would have definitely loved Ahmedabad, but not complaining about Odisha, but definitely Mumbai could have been avoided.
All right. Yeah. I mean that makes complete sense. I think. Yeah. I guess Mumbai. I suppose it's for the crowd or more, but fair
It's
enough. I
more
think.
of two stadiums in Mumbai. I feel the ISL team is playing in Mumbai Football Arena, and the
Yeah.
DY Patilas are available. So it's more about two stadiums being available in the same city.
But you're right. I think giving opportunities to different states probably would have been crazy. It would have been really helpful. Not like Mumbai needs any help financially, so might as well just give in chances to some other stadiums, some other teams, and see. I mean, got the crowds there as well. Because yeah, I mean, Orissa. Even if you're gonna watch the games, if you're staying for the group stages, it was what, like, how many days were you there for?
I was there for 6 days. I actually missed the first game. I was supposed to fly for the first game. I
So
reached for the second
you,
game.
yeah, so if you're there for the first game, you're roughly there for
It
a
was
week,
8 days,
10,
around eight
yeah,
days for the first.
8 to 10 days. Yeah, so even from like a tourism perspective, to get people in there and see Orissa, right? It's a nice thing
Yeah,
too, because in between games, you obviously have a lot of time to spend around in
yeah,
Bhubaneswar
right.
and all that. So definitely would have been nice to see other cities as well, not the most well-known cities, or have them hosted, and it would have been nice. But yeah, I suppose that's another story for another day, and hope probably one that we hope will happen the next time India hosts a similar sort of tournament. But yeah, I guess we'll definitely keep an eye out. What are your final thoughts on the under 17 World Cup before we end it? Like your final thoughts, or I suppose your final thoughts on the whole experience of being there, watching them live, and everything.
I think we were super proud of the team's efforts, and we enjoyed supporting them and watching them. Uh, but yeah, I think a little bit more support from the federation would have really helped. So maybe I'm again going to look forward to what they are doing for the under 18 SAF championships in Bangladesh. That's my checkpoint for seeing if they are actually going to work on things and build up on this. I don't know. I've said that already 3 times, but yeah, that's my checkpoint. That's my.
How's the one thing I forgot to ask? How's the foreign support there though?
Oh, it was brilliant. The game against Morocco, we saw fans with drums chanting at the opposite side. We were on one side of the stadium and they were on the other side. They were there with flags, drums. I don't know if they were only family members or were they actual fans, but they were loud. There were 10 of them, but they were quite loud. We could hear them play the drums, the chanting. We definitely hear them. And Brazil and USA was more of, I think, a family affair. You could see the families of the players, and they tried their best to do whatever they could. I guess Germany had some fans because during their games we saw some flags come out and we saw around 20, 15, 20 people. So maybe I think Germany and Morocco, I think, had fans. Others were probably families. I
Yeah,
couldn't see supporters as such, but yeah, they were. Morocco was the best of the lot from the away teams.
because European football in terms of women's football is getting quite popular, and I thought this is again. I mean, I know I don't want to end on a negative, but India really should have taken advantage of you know getting like inviting the German fans or the American fans or the Brazilian fans. I suppose distance might be an issue, but still, how many ever they can. The prices
Right.
wouldn't have been too high anyway.
Too high
So
for them.
yeah, so to have them on there should kind of an opportunity missed, and get them. It's an like I said, additional is tourism, because you have places like Orissa, and then these guys anyway come in. They'll spend probably 2 weeks in India itself, so you're gaining that much. They're not going to come just for 5 6 days. So yeah, I suppose that's an opportunity missed, but yeah, again, these are lessons that need to be learned. Like if like if you and I were on sitting in those board levels, we'd be like, this, you need to act upon this. You can't be sitting doing nothing. But unfortunately, that's not the way the world works. But thank you, Akshay, for coming on to this podcast and giving your thoughts on this campaign. I know it wasn't what we hoped for, but I'm hoping that it's something that will bring hope to for the future. So
Definitely.
that's me using a lot of hope, hoping for things to come. But thank you, Akshay, for being on this podcast. A pleasure talking to you, and I can't wait to host you in the near future.
Same here, same here. Glad to be here. Let me know if there's some other interesting topic to, speak.
Definitely. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you to those of you who are listening to this, or if you're watching this. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, apologies it wasn't live, but if you're watching this on YouTube, please do let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd love to have you on this podcast. We do watch alongs, we do the hard hitting topic stories, and we also do tier rankings on YouTube. Then we also do like one-on-one guest interviews from people who've been in the past, who've been on the podcast in the past. So we talk to them about everything but football. So go check them all out. This podcast, this particular series is also available on as an audio podcast. So if you want to listen to the audio version, because if you're driving or if you just want to listen to it uh, like audibly, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, go check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're there. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us. The links will all be in the description down below, and as well as on the screen that you're watching. And yeah, do let us know if you want to be a part of the podcast as well. We'd love to host you, and I will catch you all sometime soon. But that's about it for episode 6 of season 4 of the FFS series. I'm your host, Praddy, once again. You stay safe and see you.